Security roles help you control access to features like admin settings, reports, and the welcome page. Create specific roles for different functions in your organization, like LMS administrator, and each can have unique permissions. Administrators define the general characteristics of the role. Consistency is key, so stick to a naming convention. Give it a unique security role ID, or let the system generate one for you. Remember to categorize roles for easy sorting. When filling out the description, be clear and thorough to help keep things organized, especially if you're creating several roles. Continue to define characteristics. Start with fewer permissions for each role and add permissions as you determine what users need to see in the system. The first role you'll likely create is the super admin/super user role. This is a special role that has most permissions. As you create roles, a parent-child relationship is one way to organize them. The top-level administrator for a function will reside at the top of the tree, with lower-level or more constrained roles structured as children. The default parent is usually the system administrator role, but you can choose any existing role. The hierarchy matters, as the selected parent determines the available permissions. For example, you might have ABC Company, LMS Manager as the parent, and X Division, LMS Manager beneath it. You can add or copy permissions on the permissions page, but you must have permission yourself to do so. When you add a permission to a child role, it also goes to the parent if it's not already there. Keep this in mind. To remove a permission from the parent, first, take it out of all child roles. Here are some permission best practices. Only add necessary permissions for a role and avoid duplicating what's already in the default user role. On the constraints page, you can restrict permissions to specific groups or areas, like allowing certain sales team members to view reports, but only for their division. Let's explore some key points about constraints. There are two types. 1. General. Applies to all relevant permissions at once. And 2. Permission-specific. Applied to each permission individually. The constraints page displays all constraints for each permission in the role. Constraints enable an organization to give permissions to users to see data or access certain functionality, but restrict them to a specific area or group of people. For example, people in the sales division have access to report data, but only for users in the sales division or in a sales position. If you add multiple constraints of the same type, such as the user's OUs, they act as OR statements. If the constraints are of different types, such as a user OU and a provider, then they act as AND statements. Let's create a dynamic role for HR analysts. They need to edit user records in bulk and queue reports for automation for users in their location as well as their division. Once you've added all the required permissions, you would apply the constraints of restrict to user's location and restrict to division. Telecommuter. This will give each HR analyst access to the users in their location and those in the telecommuter division. Here are important things to know about permissions and constraints. If a permission is added or deleted from an existing role, the change takes effect immediately for users previously assigned to the role. They will need to log out and log back into the portal to see those changes. When an administrator adds, modifies, or removes constraints from one or more permissions in an existing role, then the changes to constraints do not automatically apply to users previously assigned to the role. Create specific roles for different functions in your organization. Ensure that each role has unique permissions that authorize what users can see or do in the system.